back to another exciting episode of the Film Alchemist podcast, the show where we take the movies we love, break them apart to find out what gives them their magic. I'm your host, Josh Griffey, joined as always by a small fish in a big pond.
Well, my name's Alex Dandino.
We'll get to the foghorn leghornness of this soon enough. Before today's stellar, stunning masterclass of an episode, a little business, people, it's official. We're on Patreon. That's right, patreon.com/filmalchemistpod. We've seen some new of you joining us. Thank you. That means the world to us. We have an exclusive content library over there that's filling up constantly. You can actually have a say in what goes in that library. As you support more and more, you can even have us do a double feature. You get your commentaries. We got our Tales from the Crypt miniseries right now. So much fun stuff. We work really hard to make that worth your while over there. Also, when you're a patron, let us know what we can do to improve. We're always working on ourselves. Maybe not our physiques, but our podcasting for sure. That area is not, we're not skimping on that. So again, that's patreon.com/filmalchemistpod. Thank you from the bottom of our little hearts for the support you can show. That means the world to us. If you can't support the show financially, we gets it, man. Something you can do that's free and easy, right? Leave 5-star rating and reviews wherever you find the show. Leave a little blurb about how much you like us. That helps us defeat the algorithms that try to fuck up our amazing stories, right? The Jim, whatever his name is, the golden god of story ruining, whatever this fucking guy. Also, if you could just send an episode to a friend. Send the show to a friend that you know likes movies. We'll take it from there. We'll win them over. We can do that, I think. We'll try our best, as you wish. So yeah, just send an episode to a friend. The YouTube is Film Alchemist. You can see our faces. We're also working on some new stuff for YouTube, so go to Film Alchemist over there, subscribe. The email, filmalchemistpod@gmail.com. We're on all the socials you're on. We're easy to get a hold of. Reach on out. All right. Other exciting news, we've already started programming the October Mega Marathon, so we're just little sluts for punishment. That's what we...
It's only February. It's pretty good for us.
This is the time of year we're stoked about the idea of the October Mega Marathon before we get crushed under the realities of how much work that is. But
I think I always enjoy that in July, we always have that resurgence. Like, oh, dude, this is going to be easy. Like, we've totally figured out how to do this.
Out. We've got
and then
so
by
much
September,
time.
we want to. And then by September, we're like, why do we do this every year?
Yeah,
this
why do we? You know why? Because the love of cinema. But that's neither here nor there. We're here to talk about one of the great epic love tales ever told. So this month, the pod tells a love story, right? This one and Princess Bride probably most perfect, and The Notebook, they all perfectly describe the theme, right? Big Fish, the Tim Burton movie. This is a story about a man who is dying and a son is trying to reconcile the things he doesn't love about his dad and his dad's propensity for only talking about himself like a narcissistic fuck and lying constantly. And his son trying to grapple with that. Now, this is a movie I loved when I saw. I was a huge Tim Burton fan when I was a younger man. Before he got into, like, franchises. I think Tim Burton's best on his own, right? To craft his own little worlds. I will say, this is one of those movies. There's a lot of them, right? Once you become a parent, when the movie completely changes and betrays you and becomes an exercise in how much body weight you can lose from crying. So that is the effect it had on me today. I actually still think the whimsy and the fantasy and the emotional core of the film work perfectly well. I found this to be a delightful viewing experience. So, Alex, opening thoughts on Big Fish.
I mean, this is truly this is going to sound very mean. This is truly like the last time I actually gave a shit about what Tim Burton put into the universe.
Well, because what happened is you can tell this is his I'm going to win an Oscar movie.
Yeah. Like, I was actually, this was something I wanted to say, like, particularly is there's all, like, great, like, directors who, like Tim Burton, like, great genre directors, like Tim Burton, all have this thing. They gear up and amp up and they ramp up to this movie that's going to be their magnum opus. And to me, Big Fish is
going to set them aside from the boxes they've been put in.
And to me, Big Fish is always Tim Burton's movie. And when Tim Burton did not win Best Director, Best Picture, anything for it, that was when he's like, all right, well, I'm just going to make a fuck ton of money for the rest of my life, and that's how I'll get back at everybody for
pearls before swine. How dare you?
But that's exactly what this is. Like, and again, every director every genre director who starts out in like kind of more niche stuff does this. And it's fine. Like, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
But like,
well, the
feel
thing
like,
I would say about this, though, to your point, I think this still has the Tim Burton-ness in it. He didn't forsake what he was good at to make an award movie.
There's nothing about this that doesn't tell me it's a Tim Burton movie.
Right.
It's all still very Tim Burton. It has all the same vibes. It has this sort of like gothic folklore thing going on, and that's great. That's what you want. He's just flexing his muscles in a way. Like, to me, this is like the analog to like when you watch someone who directed Beetlejuice and also directed Ed Wood. You're like, oh wow, this is a guy who literally can kind of do it all. And this is a culmination of that. Big Fish makes me cry every time. I never don't sob. The hardest I start crying, and this is weird, and I'm not sure why, but when Time Stands Still, when he sees Alison Lohman, I'm
never
not
way.
lost it.
The sentiments of that moment, right? Because he's talking to Marion Cotillard, who this was before she was on my radar, right? Mm-hmm. He's talking to her, and he's like, "What? Everyone knows the saying that when you see true love, time stops." And it's a great sentiment, right? Because what this movie does is it captures this romantic feeling that people have about making their way through the world, right? This is a man who at his core really does appreciate other people, his hometown, where he's from, the man he's become. And so the way he romanticizes everything, right, becomes weaponized against him by his shitty son. Neither here nor there. But watching it, in those moments of sweetness, right? So you've got like this moment, you've got the moment where she turns him down to marry him, right? But then that scene when she opens the window and there's just daffodils everywhere.
Jesus Christ, man. That's
that's
one of those great directing powers that I always like am fascinated by Tim Burton with. But it's that like that level of whimsy is unbelievable. Like, that's
well, it also reminded me, it's
Tim
like,
Burton can do.
Yeah, I got to get on the old Valentine's Day hunt right now. Like, I got to do a lot better. But I think those aspirational moments, right, of Edward Bloom, right? He is this real, he's almost chipper to the point where you're like, you know what, fuck this guy. Honestly, like, if these trees kill him, fuck this guy. I'm kind of sick of his shit. Because most of us don't have that level of, like, it'll be all rightness, right?
Well,
but I think by the end, the fact that, and this is one of the clever devices of the movie, right, is early one of the tales he tells his son, right, is the witch's tale.
Yeah.
If you see into her eye, you will see how you die, right?
Right.
And so Edward Bloom has this kind of naivete his whole life because he's like, this isn't what kills me.
Yeah.
And it gives him this extra level of I can do whatever I want, right? I can really fully pursue my dreams with the unencumbered force of a fucking mental weakling, right? Because I can just fucking plow through whatever.
Right.
But I think it's that fucking perfect thing where it's like it's almost too saccharine. But the fact that you see the dad in his current state, you kind of want him to hold on to those good memories. Yeah. It is an interesting balancing act the movie pulls.
I think to me this is the truth of the movie is that we never really want to know the real story. Like, when we're older and our parents tell us the truth about certain things in our lives that we had no fucking idea about. Like, whether you're faced with that truth early on or not, it doesn't matter. There's always these moments that are like, oh God, that is so much worse than I thought it was. Or there's this hidden truth beneath these things. So when you see Albert Finney in the state he's in, because he's putting on a show, like, they have that moment where Marion Cotillard's "Can I take your picture?" It's right when he's about to start telling the story.
I'm glad you brought this up.
And she walks out of the room and he like winces in pain.
Agony, yeah.
He's clearly in agony, but this is the story you tell everyone is it's okay. It's gonna be all right.
Love that shot.
It's an amazing moment in a movie that is like filled with whimsy because that's the truth. That's the honest moment right there.
Yes, that is the classic show me, don't tell me. In that moment, that's all I need to know about this man.
Yeah.
Right? Is that he is a man who lives his life to put this story forward, right?
Right.
And again, I think the doctor says it at the end, right? When he's on his literal deathbed.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctor's like, did he ever tell you the story about when you're born? And he's like, well, I heard like the version about the fish. It's the same thing we heard at his marriage, right? That like set off the feud.
Yeah, yeah.
The marriage and the ring and the fish and whatever. And the doctor's like, well, he was on business in Wichita. He couldn't make it. It killed him that he couldn't make it. And he just goes, if I had to choose, right? It's not romantic, is it? And he goes, if I had to choose, I might perhaps choose the version with the big fish. You know what I mean? And his bitch-ass son just goes, I like your version. And it's like, all right, no, you don't. No, you don't.
Like
You're not paying an HBO subscription to watch that.
This is a really fascinating, like, Billy Crudup's character is so fascinating.
That's his name.
Because,
like,
you
let's talk about how big of a piece of shit Billy Crudup is for a minute.
I want to, hang on. Before we, look, there's no doubt that he's a piece of shit throughout most of this movie. Absolutely. But this is the thing. And this is, like, the really important thing about this character. Because, like, there's so many piece of shit sons in cinema history that just, like the worst offense of all is the kid from the birdcage. Never, like, unrelenting piece of shit.
You are correct. Billy Crudup doesn't reach that level of horrible. He's so petty.
But hang on, though. This is the thing. And so what's petty is not talking to your father for 3 years because he told a story at your wedding. That's bitchy. Absolutely. However,
everyone's parents do an awkward wedding. I remember.
Everybody's parents.
That's their prerogative. They brought you into the world.
Yeah, everybody's parents at the rehearsal dinner do an unauthorized biography of nothing anyone should ever need to hear about. That's
at least his dad didn't bomb with jokes, right? Like, right. I've seen worse.
So, but what it is it's a culmination. Like, that's, I think what it is it's your special day and you make it about you, but that is a misinterpretation and a misunderstanding of what parenting is. Like, we're parents now. And it's hard to watch this movie knowing that because you're just sitting there and you're like, wow, like, this guy really is, like, deep down trying as hard as humanly possible not to tell his kid, I have to make money. I'm gone all the time. Therefore,
hey,
he replaces...
fuck off. Do you like that big old house you got? You like that big old college that took you to that big old corner office, you motherfucker?
So what's interesting is instead of telling the truth, he replaces himself with this version of himself that is this character of whimsy and sparkle that all children want to imagine.
He's a Paul Bunyan in his own mind.
Everybody wants to imagine their parents as superheroes, and Edward Bloom tries his best to give his child that image so that when he's at school, he doesn't go, why isn't your dad here? Oh, well, he's selling, I can't remember, what is vacuum cleaners or some shit?
Robot hands. Okay, so that's a good point I want to key in on.
I can't believe I just forgot that. Robot hands.
I don't think Edward is giving that to his son, so his son has that image of him. What I think is that it pains Edward so much that he's missing time with his wife, who is, as the lady says at the end, Helena Bonham Carter, right? To your father, it makes sense. Because there's two women in the world, your mother and everyone else.
Right.
So this man who found true love, right, who worked hard to get the fucking money for that house, who works hard to keep doing that, but he's in a fucking rough position. I think he tells these stories, right, for him. It's so his time away where he was missing those moments that you can't get back, right? Like, now, but my littlest son is going to start school next year, like real school. So you're like, I don't have like a baby anymore. Right? Like, I'm not going to have, they're going to start growing further and further away from me, right? I was lucky enough that, we had COVID and whatever. So, like, I got a lot of time alone with them when they're young, right? And I'll always be thankful for that. Edward didn't have that, right? He probably missed birthday.
The time with them.
Not the COVID. Absolutely not the COVID. I treat COVID. Yeah, I treat COVID how Billy Crudup treats his dad. Hate it. Very petty. But he is trying to tell these stories as if his time in this world meant something, right? Trying to explain that his time away was not just this empty vacuum in him.
Sure.
That there was a meaning to it.
I think again, it cuts both ways. Like, for me, it's always, you do this for your child, but you also have to do it for yourself because, like, it's like you were saying, like, it is hard to be away from your kids. So how do you justify it? It's like, well, to myself, for my own sake, I have to justify it in some way that doesn't sound so bad as just like, I'm working. What do you want from me? Like, instead, you want to tell a story and you want to make yourself feel at least somewhat like, okay, I haven't just wasted my time earning money. And that's not a bad thing. Providing for your family is an important thing. But
but I think most, like 90% of parents, right? There are probably that group that are like, I didn't really want this, but whatever.
Right.
Any parent you ask, any day you see them working at their job, would rather be at home playing with their fucking kids.
Absolutely.
No doubt about it.
1000%.
Every fucking day of the week. But you got to fucking pay bills.
You got to pay bills.
And it's a, a hard truth of this world. If I had nothing to do in my life except for to dote on my friends and child and wife, to be so lucky, right? Like, that's just not the world, sadly. And so there is this element that the movie doesn't cover a lot, right? We get Billy Crudup at his wedding yelling at his dad, right? Where he says, you weren't the center of the universe for one day and it fucking killed you.
Yeah.
And, the dad's, I'm sorry I embarrassed you. He goes, you're embarrassing yourself and you don't see it. I think that line is crucial to how you watch the rest of the movie. Because there's all this unspoken, dad wasn't there, so he wrote in, I think he says it at one point, right? Did you make these stories up because your life was so boring and not what you wanted that you were always leaving so you could go to these fantasy worlds, which is where you really wanted to exist?
Right.
And I think that is such a brutal thing to hear, because as a younger guy, I feel like I would relate to Billy Crudup, right? I was never close with my father figures or whatever.
Right.
And then now as a dad, I'm like, you fucking prick. Like, you absolute prick.
Well, I think what's interesting
he clearly loved both of them very much, I think.
Right. Well, and this is something that I think this is something you can see through all of Tim Burton's oeuvre anyways, which is that the macabre in the mundane is something that he does better than literally anybody. And I think that that's why Big Fish is so thrilling and so beautiful, is because at every turn, when you focus on the mundane, like the City of Spectre is probably the best example. Like, that is truly one of the most interesting moments in the movie for me, because first off, Loudon Wainwright is the greatest actor ever to portray a guy in a hometown. Like, he's just that guy that you ask, like, hey, can you smile? Oh yeah, no problem, done. Like, that's like the entire bit.
Can you do a folksy, maybe we'll sacrifice you later on a blood altar kind of smile?
Can you do like a folksy thing? Can you do like a folksy thing with a hint of Wicker Man? Yeah, no problem.
Right.
But like, that's like the whole vibe. So when you're Inspector and you see, and then Steve Buscemi plays the poet laureate, you realize like this town is exactly what Bloom's life is, really. Like, Spectre is named aptly, of course. Like, it's it's all pretty on the nose. Like, there's nothing about
it's kind of got like a heavenly metaphor going.
Well, yeah, and there's like there's the came on the lens look that everybody's got. Like, again, it's
well, that happens in a small town that has orgies constantly.
Well, yeah, obviously. I mean, there's only one little kid. Like, come on, everyone's been clipped, but they're just banging out nonstop.
Oh, I'm strafing again. Sorry. Oh.
But
I don't usually do this from a handstand position.
But like, that's that mundanity in the story, is you're like, oh, if I stay here, yes, my life will be pleasant. Like, it'll always be sunshine. It'll be somewhat perfect, but like, I'll never know what else is out there. And I think that's
But not even that, right? Spectre being in the middle of huge dark woods, right?
Right.
Edward Bloom's house and his wife and his life and his son are Spectre to him. Right?
See,
when he goes out, he's in these mythic adventures.
But see, I'm not sure. Here's the thing. And you said it already. When we were young, when you're younger, you think about it this way. It's in the middle of the deep, dark woods. To me, the middle of the deep, dark woods is the core. And when they're like, oh, you're early, you're not supposed to be here yet. Because everyone wants to interpret this as like death, because it's called Spectre,
heaven.
Nobody wears shoes, heaven,
It's heaven, yeah.
That, I think, is a very obvious calculation for what it is. For me, what Spectre is, because it's at the center of a deep, dark woods, what it is not heaven, but it is the goal of the majority of us, which is what we're trying to do, which is just live a decent life, stay home, do those kinds of things. Well, when they say you're here early, what they're trying to say is you have more life to live still. You have to go back out into the woods, essentially.
Yeah.
You don't have to.
You still have to pay bills. You're not retired.
You're not retired. Like, you can't be in suburbia if you've never experienced the rest of the world. So just to go to Ashton, from Ashton to Spectre, that's why the poet laureate can't write anything interesting, because he hasn't done anything interesting.
Yeah.
He's
stuck in this mundanity, right? But and even the woods, right? Like, he's just like, I don't die like this, and the trees let him go.
Right.
It's like, that to me just reeks of adult life. right? There's all these fucking entanglements and shit grabbing you. You're like, I should have stayed at fucking Spectre. I should have stayed at home. But then you're like, oh, this won't kill me. I just have to suffer adult life and do a job and fucking pay bills. That's what that kind of... Because the moment he says this won't kill me, he steps out back on the road with his friend.
Right. Well,
right?
like,
Still got a mission. Still got a job to do.
Well, I think that's the other thing, too, is, like, knowing your end. Knowing, like, Edward Bloom knowing how it'll all end gives him this... Almost gives him that lightness that we see throughout the entire movie. And by the way...
We need to put a pin in that, because that's a big debate I'm going to have at the end.
Albert Finney is great. Albert Finney's amazing. Ewan McGregor is fucking unbelievable.
Ewan McGregor is good. Albert Finney is the MVP of the movie to me. He is so fucking captivating and engaging. Not to shit on Ewan McGregor.
I was just, like,
but I think he gets all the love all the time.
Albert Finney. Ewan McGregor's great. I think Albert Finney always needs love. Like, I have no problem giving Albert Finney the respect he deserves. I do, but like they intertwine so well. It's not even a matter, like, because like they obviously are not the same person. They look completely different. It has absolutely no, like, the only person you'd be like, I think
the
that's
road
the same
is hard
person
as shit. Apparently,
the road is brutal. The only two people you'd be like, I think that's the same person is Alison Lohman and Jessica Lange. Like, those are the only two people in the movie. You'd be like, I'm pretty sure that's the same person.
Maybe Helena Bonham Carter and that ghastly little child. Just those sunken eyes. Not to shit on a child's appearance. That was crude of me, but...
Wow.
I think she was made to look ghoulish.
You mean
I think that's Tim Burton's... Yes.
Are you talking about the little girl in Spectre?
The shoe-throwing girl. I think that's Tim Burton's fetish, is to take small, young women and make them look ghoulish.
It's fair.
Like, if that guy had a masturbatorium, that's all you would see in there is gaunt, sunken eyes, ghastly little girls.
We're very crossed into something else here.
I bet if you went to Tim Burton's home, there's two options, right? It looks like a folksy IKEA setup, right? And you're like, oh my God, you went Modern Farm? This is mind-blowing. Or yeah, masturbatorium with like gaunt, disheveled, sunken eyes, but like pristine dress, but you can tell life fucked him up everywhere else.
Well, you know, he did that movie Big Eyes.
Probably hand-painted in like Renaissance lighting.
Okay, so he did that movie Big Eyes about the husband who stole his wife's paintings and passed them off his own. I bet it's masturbatorium is just those paintings. That's it. That's why
Look
he
at
did
me!
the movie.
Look at me!
Look at me! You can't close your eyes!
Avert your eyes! Shame! Maybe. Not that you guys were expecting. We're talking about romance stories, not Tim Burton J&O, but anywho, now that's in my mind. Yeah. But to the point, here's a question I'll ask you.
Sure.
Later in the film, he finds a deed for the young girl. He thinks that his dad was having an affair. He thinks he had this other life, all this shit, right?
Right.
Why did Edward save that town and not tell anyone about it, not want profits from it? Like, he just pooled together all of these people that he had helped make money. And through his storytelling ability, he literally saved a town, right? The real world had found Spectre and it was fucking destitute.
Right.
He saved this town and brought it back to that ideal location. My estimation is that that's something he couldn't do at his own home as his son was getting older. So it is this kind of snow globe effect of him keeping something the way it should have been. What do you make of that bit?
You're asking why he didn't seek the praise?
Why did he save the town? And then he just left when the job was done. That's obviously a lot of time he's also not spending at home with his family. Why did he save the town?
If you go back, you think about the first time he enters Spectre. And everyone is living their best life. Everyone's shoes are off. Why would you ever need to go anywhere else? Mm-hmm. I think because those people have all, like, the real world, like you said, the real world's intruded on that town, essentially. Mm-hmm. I think because Edward has seen how the real world is, maybe there is this element of Edward that is like, if there's one place in the world that should not be touched by what happened to what the real world is, maybe it's this one place. Like, if I can do this one thing, like, maybe that's what they were trying to say when he says you're early. That's what it is. It's not. That's why to me, Spectre isn't like heaven or death or anything like that. It's you're early because you're not supposed to know. Like you're not supposed to know about this part of the world yet.
I think it's just like
when you
I
get
think
there,
it's the generic homestead, right? It's like a Little House on the Prairie thing.
It is, but that's what I'm getting at though. Is like when you get there, when you finally get like, look, you and I, we're both married, both have kids, that kind of thing. When you finally get to that place where you're sitting in your house, that kind of thing, you always build it up in your mind a little bit as something it's a little different, you know? Like you always think about like, oh, married, kids, like there is this sort of like 70s came on the lens shine to it. And then you're there and you're like, Jesus Christ, why did no one warn me that this is exactly like it's this rundown town that I somehow have to, you know, keep running. So, I mean, to me, it's a big metaphor for your life in general. Spectre is this version of your life that you want.
Yeah.
And then when you get to Spectre and you see what the version of your life is that you got, it's your job. It's your job to essentially save the town from bankruptcy. You become the hero of your own story, literally.
It is telling that he's obsessed with the white picket fence, right? It's this American ideal.
It's
Let me ask you another question. This has been rattling around my brain. Do you think he actually fucked that lady?
No. I don't. Well, you know what?
Alex?
Yeah, sorry. No, I'm thinking. Yeah. No.
Because she says at the start, right? It's not for me to change the image you have of your father, this and that. Then proceeds to tell him this. Your dad is a great man's story. She goes in for the kiss and he's like, no, I'm sorry. I can't. And just fucking leaves. He's coming to her house to put up just like a hat rack.
He fucked her.
I think he probably fucked her.
I mean, I think this is something that's like
it takes away from the whimsy of the movie.
It's not that. Like to me, like the whimsy of the here's the thing. If you think the whimsy of the movie, if the wind gets taken out of your sails by the reality of this movie, then I mean you probably can't watch it in the first place. Because like the movie starts in a very real place, which is like your dad's dying, you're coming home, and like you want to get to the bottom of what all these fucking stories actually mean. That's neither here nor there. To me, even if he fucked her, which probably is pretty likely.
Probably fucked her. 90% sure that happened.
Right. And this is a thing that's interesting about like the avenue. Because Jessica Lange's like, I don't want to ruin, or not Jessica Lange, but I don't want to ruin the image you have of your father. Billy Crudup's image of his father isn't that good.
Like she doesn't know that. She probably assumes that everyone loves Edward the way that they love Edward.
Right, exactly. So that's what I'm saying, though, is like the image in Billy Crudup's mind is that, oh, yeah, he definitely fucked this woman. So for him
But he tells her that up front, so she knows that before the tale.
For him to carry that knowledge, though, knowing, and then to let her tell the story. Like, here's the thing. Like, Will is such a masochist throughout the movie of, like, wanting to know the truth. Because, like, the truth, look, you and I both know truths. They're terrible. Like telling, like
almost exclusively, yeah.
Having to tell the truth is the worst thing in the world. I've never met anybody who enjoys telling the truth. Okay, it's literally like it's
Fair
terrible.
enough.
And you know, as you get older, you realize that.
Well, this is the thing, right? You probably don't get that ending unless she tells him that lie.
Absolutely.
And again, the whole movie is choosing what version of people you want them to be.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Is like,
yeah.
You don't. Like, the truth is, it doesn't matter. He totally had sex with her, but the truth is it doesn't matter because he still loved Jessica Lange.
I mean, he just got some road tang. That happens. It's not.
But this is the other thing about that, though. And this is like a really interesting, this is like another Tim Burtonism, is that establishment of Americana, like that early 50s, because Tim Burton grew up here in Burbank. Mm-hmm. And if you've ever been to Burbank out in LA, Burbank is still shockingly untouched by the rest of Los Angeles. Like my mother taught there at Burbank High School for a while when they lived out here. And friends of hers have lived out here since the 50s. And like they remember a time when everything looked like Edward Scissorhands. All those towns, everything had like, everybody had a white picket fence, everybody had a multicolored house, those kinds of things. Like that is the facade that we all agree to. So the truth is that it doesn't matter. Like, yes, he definitely had sex with her. You hope he doesn't, but the
Agree to disagree with us. Go to many of our social media outlets and yell at us. Let's start a conversation here.
But the truth of it is that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because the story is that he was still a good man, and that like it's hard. Like that's the only way I know how to really describe it.
But even through his mistakes, he still had things to offer. I mean, it is kind of a monkey wrench to the film if he does it. I feel like that's something that many people would be mad about, right? Had they found out.
But I think the other part of that though is that in like the 50s and 60s, like culturally, I think we all have seen movies about this time period, and it seems like it's just
you just would put your keys in a bowl and just bang whoever's wife you wanted.
Well, I'm not talking about key parties and swingers. I'm saying that it was common. Like there's a lot of common.
Well, once you do that on the cul-de-sac, you can't just leave that when you exit the cul-de-sac. That's like a lifestyle now.
Like the best example I can give is like the Don Draper Mad Men thing, which is like it's expected that you're going to understand that sometimes you're going to get cheated on. Like women were prepared for this kind of thing, and it's not fair, and that's not how that should be.
I mean, if you enter this is what's his name, Andres Karolinko, the NBA draft player.
Yeah,
it got out there was a news story that him and his wife had a deal that every year he got to bang one person that was not his wife. So he's on like, a back-to-back, right? And he's like, I'm in Utah. I'm going to grab one of these 6'5", blonde, picked, Aryan women and pound it. He would just call his wife and be like, I used my one. And then that was it. And that was her theory of this will keep him from being like a serial cheater and ruining our marriage.
I think that's weird.
I'll say this. I ran it by my wife. Shut me down.
Yeah,
I'm not bringing NBA assets to the marriage.
I live in a pretty strictly monogamous marriage, and by pretty strictly I mean strictly monogamous.
It means if I wasn't, I would be pretty murdered.
But I think this is the other thing too, and this is another part about like the image of Edward Bloom, because the story of how he meets her and how he courts her, the daffodils. Like, imagine knowing the truth. Like, you and I are both cynical, so we assume the truth. But doesn't that just like kill all the daffodils in that entire meadow? You're just like, God damn it, you asshole.
Well,
like,
no, because that's him when it's
someone just
before
trampling
marriage, right?
But that doesn't matter.
Young Love is a perfect, untouched, unruined story. You're not on chapter 62.
Yeah, but the
where
problem
it's like the dog threw up on the comforter again, and we're yelling at each other about who cleans it up.
But
right? We've had this argument 5 times.
But it takes that beautiful came on the lens veneer that we love so much away a little bit.
I agree, but is that
it gives
not
it a little
the point?
bleach bypass?
Is that not the point?
All you film nerds out there,
demystify what Edward Bloom has created.
But do you like that's the question of the moment then? Like, right. Do you want to demystify it? Like, just because she says, I don't want to ruin it. I don't want to ruin the image of your father.
My parenting thing with my kids, right? I don't want to tell them Santa Claus doesn't exist, because wouldn't you rather live in a world with Santa Claus, right? When they ask me, hey, do you think Loch Ness Monster's real? I hope so.
Well, wouldn't you rather live in a world
I'd rather world and live with that stuff. I'd rather have that stuff be part of our existence, right? It's just cooler.
Absolutely.
The Tooth Fairy, the Easter Bunny, whatever, I know that these are all stories, but my kids don't. And I'm like, why am I going to take away like little bits of magic from the world for them? They'll fucking be done with it when they're done with it.
Like, I think that's the really important thing, is not to take away, like, Billy Crudup's searching to take away magic from himself, essentially. Not from to take away magic from his father. It's like one of those things.
He legitimately does not love his father anymore, right? The line was, I see nothing of myself in him, and he sees nothing of himself in me. I think this is a pretty burned relationship by the time the movie starts.
See, and I don't see it that way. Because if it was truly, I don't see anything. Here's the thing. Edward Bloom spends so much time trying to get out of Ashton. Like, he gets out of Ashton finally. He runs. He's like, I can't be. I'm the fucking big fish in a little pond. I have this giganticism. Now I know why. Like, that kind of whole thing. It's the same thing for Billy Crudup's character. But now you're in a situation where you don't want to repeat the mistakes of your father. You don't want to do the same things.
He's not escaping Ashton. He's escaping Edward.
He's escaping
Shadow.
his father. He's escaping his life. He's escaping this life that he never asked for. And those tall tales make absolutely no sense. However, if he really wasn't like his father, and if he really didn't love him, he would have been an insurance broker. He would not have been a writer. It's literally the same person.
But he's not writing anything cool.
Not yet. But he says at the top of the movie, he's like, you tell stories just like I do. He's like, I just talk and you write them down.
Yeah, I
like,
pictured him as like a sales guy. You know what I mean?
I picture
straight information, none of the flavor, none of the complications.
But again, it's one of those things where you look at this. This is a guy who's fled from this whimsical father he's had his entire life. So if that's the case, why would you not be something? Why are you a writer? So if you're a boring writer, like let's say you're doing something like writing obits or something like that. Not to say I'm sure that's not thrilling in some people, but let's say you're the obit guy. If that's what you're doing, that's your business. But you can't tell me that you went to college to become a writer, or you decided you wanted to be a writer and you're like, I only want to write obits. That's to me the element that always makes me realize that he loves his father. Of course, like, he loves his father. He just doesn't want to admit that level of whimsy is what keeps him alive, essentially. Because really, when
he's written a different version of Edward. I think, of course, I think he's okay with his father not being a part of his life anymore. And at the end, he sees this as his chance to, I'm going to get what I need out of this situation.
I think he thinks that he's okay with it. But this movie is not. This movie is about believing. And I think when you shut a door finitely like that, for at least not me personally or anybody personally, but for this character, I would say, I don't think that works. Like, that's not how these characters exist, because you also don't marry. I mean, I don't remember, like, Marion Cotillard's character has a lot of whimsy in her. She's literally taking pictures of people. That
right. She enjoys his father for the character that he is, but she doesn't have the years and years of baggage with this guy.
So for her to be there to provide,
I'm not saying he never loved his father. I think by this point he's sick of his shit.
I think he's sick of his shit, but I also think it has more to do. It has less to do with Edward and more to do with Will's problem.
Right. It's all Will's bullshit. Right. Yeah. And again, not to give parents a pass, I'm sure Edward was not always the easiest.
Yeah. I'm sure
right.
Hey,
but
look, telling a big ass long yarn about catching a big fish the day your kid was born is a fucking annoying thing to have to sit through at a rehearsal dinner.
I don't want to hear your 35-minute yarns for the 15th time.
Please.
But
not this one.
Again, I think that's where he starts. I think at the end when he just realizes this is who the man is and it's over.
Yeah.
He is gracious enough to join him for a moment. Because there's two moments in the film that I think are really beautifully done, right? One is where we have Helena Bonham Carter telling an Edward story, but from her own version. Mm-hmm. And she uses some of the exact same verbiage he does, right?
Right.
And it's a little tamped down, but we still have the giant straightening the house. We still have, we didn't have sex, all these other myths, right? And so you see her telling his story. At the end, for them to be in that moment, and he knows this is it, and his father just begs him, tell me what I saw in the eye. And for but a moment, he says, I will stop this feud that we had. This is the last moment.
Oh, dude.
I will tell my own Edward story.
Mm-hmm.
See, I'm going to tear up. The cutaway of it is whatever, right? It's kind of this, he's carrying him and whatever. But the moments that make that work are not the fun, mythological, all his people by the river, right? Him turning into the fish. When Albert they cut Finney, back to Albert Finney watching his son tell him a story the way he tells him, right? His one last his one last gift to his son is you can take this fucking horrifying moment and make it better, right? You can tell it how you want. And dude, I'm going to cry again. I cried a shitload watching this. But when Albert Finney at the end says, that's exactly how it happened.
I mean,
and then, yeah, that's it. That's his last breath. But I thought it was so fucking beautiful watching him watch his son take away the hate and the venom and whatever and just write a happy ending for them.
I mean, that's exactly what this is just, it's one of those learning things. Like it's like it's passing it. It's like it's that tribal thing where you pass something on to your child. So like, yeah, all that hate and all that venom goes away. But it's when he tells that story, the pride and joy in Albert Finney's performance, because that's what it is. It's just like, my kid can tell these stories. He just has chosen not to.
Also, he sees that his son just truly loves him for one moment.
It's
because that's actually, I got the line wrong, right? Because Billy Crudup ends the thing and he's like, you became what you always were, a very big fish.
Yeah.
He kind of pauses. He looks at his dad. He says, that's how it happened. And Albert Finney goes, exactly.
Because he knows.
I mean,
that's
to me,
parenting.
that's a Grand Slam fucking final. I mean, the movie has a couple more minutes that, aren't necessary, but it's fine. That's where you're like, this journey has meant so much to me. And I now understand why Edward was this kind of like monumental liar, right? I know his mom says everything he says isn't a lie. All right, but this guy's full of shit. Like, if you were at a bar with him, you'd be like, all right, motherfucker.
Yeah, yeah.
But you enjoy him so much as a character. Why would you want to squish? Because so many of us aren't like that, right? As they say, right? He always tells all the facts and none of the complications and the flavor. You don't want to be sitting at bars with people that are just also like, well, work sucked. My marriage sucks. My kids suck. Politics sucks. It's like, it is nice occasionally to see someone who, whether earnestly or not, is finding a way to give the world some whimsy, right? Whatever it may be. And I think in that moment, he just accepts his father for his shortcomings and whatever, and just gives him this final gift. And it's perfect. Right? And then you cut to the funeral and you see all of these people that were just characters from his wild stories. You see Carl and DeVito, the Siamese twins that aren't conjoined. They're just twins.
Yeah.
And you see them all there. But when the funeral's over and they're walking to the car, he walks in on all of these people smiling and laughing in their funeral blacks, telling Edward Bloom's stories. And I think in that moment, I don't think he fully can ever forgive some of the things of the past. But I think he understands a little bit of why his father was that way. And then we see his kids playing in the pool, and they're doing a grandpa story. And he doesn't shut him down or agree. He just goes, pretty much.
Yep.
And he goes, that was my dad's final joke, right? Is that he became the story. I think the line is something along the lines of, have you ever heard a joke so many times you forget why it's funny? And then somewhere down the road, you hear it again, you remember why you loved it in the first place.
Yep.
And so that bookend, a great beginning and a great end, things get complicated in the middle. It's just awesome. Like, the ending of this movie is just, it's so well done.
It's
emotionally devastating, man.
It's the best. For me, it's the best Tim Burton's ever done. Like, it's just incredible.
I don't know if it's my favorite movie, but it's definitely as impressive a film as he's ever made, right? There's more like niche stuff that's like a little more like kind of fun. But this is a well fucking made and told story from top to bottom.
I think there's stuff he's done that's more fun, but this is it's just beautiful, man. It's just unbelievable. It's amazing.
But
it's
just
an amazing
everything,
thing.
dude. It's got Carl, this fucking lovable giant. DeVito's a werewolf. The clown has a werewolf gun in his suit. Like, it still has all these awesome Tim Burton flavors. The car under the water, the naked lady in the river. There's all of this flavor that still is everything I love about Tim Burton, but just this big fucking honest, earnest, brutally true at times, especially when juxtaposed with the fantasy. It's probably about as good as he can do at telling just like a straight human tale.
Yeah. This is as far as I mean it's
I mean, I just think of moments, right? Like Edward getting his ass kicked and just smiling at her with his bleeding mouth and the bed of daffodils, right?
The whole thing is just
fucking the witch, and I mean everything.
Him
fighting in the wars. It's just like, it's just great.
Yeah.
When he comes and he's behind the sheet and she thinks he's dead. I mean, the scene this is one of the scenes I'll always take away, right? If I was to share like 2 or 3 moments with a person, the scene when he's in the bathtub in his pajamas, he's like, I'm drying out. And she just crawls in the bathtub with him, fully in love, right? This lifetime of love.
Oh my God.
That maybe because she didn't know there was an affair, but it's still there, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's a lie. And she just crawls up to him and he just snuggles with him, right? She's like, I don't think I'll ever dry out. I mean, come on. Like, I fucking adore this movie.
Those two have some magnetic chemistry.
Well, this was before Jessica Lange became like the evil lady.
Yeah.
Like American Horror Story.
Yeah, this is before Jessica Lange became like weird, like no smile lines lady. She's incredible in this. Like,
yeah, I mean, all of the actors
I'm very
are
emotional.
wonderful.
I get very emotional watching her in this.
I mean, I think that's the thing, right? We all have loved ones that we're afraid we'll lose or loved ones we have lost. And again, it's like, my Nana, right? I talk about her a lot. She was one of the most important people in my life. She worked on the psychic hotline, chain smoked cigarettes every second of every day, was diabetic but ate donuts, right? She lived in this trailer, and her whole wall, right? Like 50 feet of trailer, right? Whatever it was just these metal utility shacks full of VHS tapes where she recorded every single movie ever on TV and had these fucking spiral notebooks that were like nicotine stained and crusty, where she had like a Dewey Decimal System of what was on every tape. Right. And with her, I saw almost all of my favorite movies the first time, right? There's this wonderful story I wanted to save when we did The Matrix, but this is like, it reminded me a lot of Big Fish. So my Nana gave me my love of movies, right?
Right.
I loved her, but she was a troubled lady. Things weren't always great with the family and her and whatever. So I saw The Matrix in theater on accident. And when I saw it, I was like, holy fuck, this is the greatest movie that's ever been made. It blew my mind.
Right.
So when it came out on DVD, I bought it and I drove out to my Nana's house. And I'm like, you have to watch this. I think I even had to bring the DVD player. But I was like, you have to watch this with me. It'll change your life. And so we sat there and, my mom's like, you were talking through the whole movie. You were so excited. My Nana was asking me questions. I didn't realize until just a couple years ago, years after her death, actually. When she died, I was so sad. That's when I met my now wife, right? That's what bonded us together. But a couple years ago, my mom's like, I was telling that story to someone. She's like, that when you showed that to your Nana, she was blind. Like, she couldn't see the movie. She just would ask me questions and engage. She just held my arm. Now I'm going to fucking cry. And she liked seeing me happy.
Right.
And she didn't stop the movie to be like, I'm blind. What are you doing? She just wasted 2 hours of her life not seeing a movie, just enjoying seeing me be excited about something. And so that was a tale I had that then turned when I realized she was blind. Wow. And I like both versions perfectly fine. But I think that's it's this movie really captures that, how will we be remembered, right? What value do we give on in whatever form? I don't know. I get very emotional watching this movie. I haven't seen it since I've become a dad, and it fucked me up last night. My kids were laughing at me. I was crying so much. And I was like, fuck you. I was like, when I have cancer, you better be fucking nice to me. Right? I was like, I'll still get up and swing on you.
It's just a beautiful movie, man. And
it is.
I hope that the way I tell stories to my kid is as good as these stories were.
I just pray that at the end, no matter how it goes, that at the end they will just be glad that we had each other, right? That's a real thing that you think about a lot when you're a parent. It's I'm sure there will be rough, bad periods. I just hope at the end they're as glad to have known me as I am to know them.
Henry really likes his mom right now, and literally,
that's boys. All boys prefer their mom.
Literally, because I pick him up from school most of the day. I'm usually the parent at home with him, and through most of the week, and every night, so Andrea gets home, they start doing bedtime, and he's like, no. He literally puts his hand and says you cannot be in bed right now. It's my time with mommy. I'm like, all right. Like, it was one of those things, like, last night Andrea came down and was like, I don't know if he likes me anymore. And she was like, oh, he likes you. But then, then I watched this movie and I was just like, maybe he does like me.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm an emotional wreck just re-talking about all this shit. But I think that's the beauty of the story, right?
Beautiful.
Is even with flawed people, try to keep some magic in it, right?
You got to keep it magical.
It wasn't all bad, hopefully.
It's okay to believe in magic.
Yeah, really, really just a fucking wonderfully powerful movie to me. And then, just stop watching Tim Burton and about this.
This is it.
Maybe Big Eyes. Honestly, I don't mind Tim Burton, right? But he did like some ill-fated... We're actually talking about some other Tim Burton coming up, so...
I hear Wednesday. Andrea really liked Wednesday.
Yeah.
So
he's a great director, man. I think he just got lost in like that Disney thing for a minute.
I think he just made a lot of money for a while, and that was fine.
If he came back and just said, I'm going to make a full-on Tim Burton joint, I'll be there first day.
Be like, oh, yeah. Absolutely.
No doubt about it. I'm not recreating an old thing. This is a Tim Burton's mindset.
If he said, I'm sorry about Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Dark Shadows, all these weird movies that I did with Johnny Depp that for some reason he thought we should do, I wouldn't care.
Hey,
be like, I got it, man.
It's not magic all the time, but when it is, appreciate it.
Agreed.
That's it for Big Fish. I hope you guys had as much fun as we did with this one. Guys, we have one more love tale to tell you. The Notebook, a movie that I honestly didn't know that we would ever cover.
Neither did I.
But here we are. We find ourselves in Notebook territory. Next month, we have a very special surprise for you. The month after that, something even bigger and better. So stay with us, guys. Follow us on social media wherever you are. Leave 5-star ratings and reviews wherever you find the show. The YouTube is Film Alchemist. And please, guys, if you enjoy what we do at all, and you can, go to patreon.com/filmalchemistpod. It's the best way to support the show. We truly appreciate it.
Seriously, it's only $1. And I know that it's one of those things, everyone's got their purse strings tight. I fully agree. Like, it's always what it is. It's $1, you'll forget about it. I promise.
We want to become a recurring expense that you don't think about.
You will forget. If you have subscriptions, this is one's worth it. It's $1 that you'll forget about.
Yep.
But we will always remember and thank you.
We will remember. When we're jerking off to gaunt, ghostly little...
Stop.
Never mind.
I would never do that.
I will tack the $1 right next to the picture of fucking malnourished women. No, neither here nor there.
Yeah, wow.
That's Tim Burton, not me. That was a Tim Burton. I'm not cutting it out. Cut that. There needs to be truth with us and our patrons. But yeah, patreon.com/filmalchemistpodcast. A ton of awesome stuff there. A ton of possibilities for you guys to help make it even better. So again, patreon.com/filmalchemistpod. Thank you to our new people, man. It means the world to us. So we will catch you next time for The Notebook.
In Italian.
The Notebook.